Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
Hi, we welcome you to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika Goswami and I'm the managing editor of On.media's B2B enterprise technology publications. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts, and today we are going to be launching into one such conversation. New research from Exabeam reveals 71% of executives believe that artificial intelligence has significantly improved productivity across their security teams, yet only 22% of analysts agree for this to be true. The research report, From Hype to Help, How AI is Really Transforming Cybersecurity in 25, highlights the gap between executive confidence in AI and the reality for frontline security teams. Today, we speak with Steve Wilson. He's a Chief AI and Product Officer at Exabeam. We'll be discussing this report and asking for his inputs on some of the points. Welcome to the show, Steve. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. A little bit about Steve first. He's a Chief AI and Product Officer at Exabeam, as I said earlier. He's also a global security innovator. He founded and co-chairs the OWASP Gen AI Security Project, the organization behind the industry standard OWASP 10 for large language models security list. His award-winning book, The Developer's Playbook for Large Language Model Security, was selected as a best cutting edge cybersecurity book by Cyber Defense magazines. Steve contributes to the development of Java at Sun Microsystems and held leadership positions at industry giants like Citrix and Oracle. He holds 11 US and international patents and was named the Cybersecurity Innovation Leader by Enterprise Security Tech. It's really great to have you with us today, Steve.
Well, thanks so much.
Would you like to say something about the report before we start with the questions? Maybe your biggest takeaways, what you think CISOs should be. Not CISOs. Okay, you talk.
I think it was interesting that the survey really talked to a very wide range of users of cybersecurity and AI technologies. And so we talked to people across different geographies. We talked to people at different roles and different levels of seniority, and there were over 1,000 people who were surveyed for this. And some very interesting things came out. There were wide regional differences about how much people were adopting AI, some of which were pretty surprising. Things like the Middle East, which has historically been slow to adopt cloud, has seemingly been the fastest to adopt AI in some of these places. But I think the most telling stat that came out of the study was the one you briefly mentioned earlier, and it's kind of become the headline that we talk about, which is this very wide disconnect between the leadership in cybersecurity organizations and the hands-on operators in those organizations in terms of how much impact they think AI is having. The senior leaders are convinced that this is having a large impact, and 70+% of them thought so. But it was only about 20% of the operators, and I think what we see is across the industry, we're seeing a trend of overpromise and underdeliver in terms of some of the AI capabilities in these products. And I think that's something that we need to really address as an industry and make sure that we are delivering real value into the hands of those users.
So with this, I think we can start with the questions. AI is playing an increasing role in identifying, even predicting threats. How has Exabeam leveraged this technology for their innovations?
So what's interesting about Exabeam is it started as a AI and machine learning company more than 10 years ago. A lot of the industry discovered AI with the launch of ChatGPT a little more than 2 years ago. But Exabeam was launched at its core to use high-speed machine learning algorithms to help you sift through the gigabytes, terabytes even petabytes of data that enterprises are collecting through their cybersecurity logs and event feeds and threat intelligence, and help you find the proverbial needles in the haystack that are those really important signals without swamping the operators. And we've become really, really effective at doing that over the past 10 years. But in more recent years, with the addition of large language models and some of these newer AI technologies, we've managed to layer on top of that. And we've created a suite of agents that we've built into our platform. We call the agents Exabeam Nova, and they help with cybersecurity investigations, really looking to run end-to-end investigations for a cybersecurity incident as soon as it's detected before the humans even get there, and be able to create a complete write-up of that incident ready for an analyst to evaluate and confirm it, rather than starting with the analyst coming to a blank slate trying to sort out why was this raised and do I think this is real.
Okay. And automation, what is the role of automation in this process?
So I think what's really interesting is that so much of the use of AI in cybersecurity has been focused on the role of detection. And, when we talk about these high-speed machine learning algorithms, that's a big part of it. We're trying to be a force multiplier inside the SOC. But I think that there are different metrics that CISOs are focused on, and one of them is mean time to detect, and that's great. We're trying to speed up the time to detect a problem, but at its core, that metric is actually not the meaningful metric. That's an indicator. It's a building block into the metrics which matter, which are mean time to respond and mean time to remediate. So it's MTTR, not MTTD. And so when we look at the role of automation, the idea is we need to be able to detect the threat. We then need to be able to automate the investigation and ultimately automate the response. And that's a big part of this shift from, let's call it machine learning, to full-blown agentic AI capabilities, is around driving that automation. And when we talk about driving these complicated multi-step workflows to run a full end-to-end cybersecurity investigation, that's only possible with a newer generation of AI technologies and techniques built on top of that sound foundation of machine learning algorithms, data cleaning technologies, and things that we've been perfecting for the last 10 years.
So I'm sorry, I'm cutting into the flow of the questions here, but it just occurred to me. This report does say that while 71% of the executives believe AI has significantly improved productivity, but only 22% of analysts agree. So there seems to be a disconnect between theory and reality. What do you attribute this to? Why do you think this gap has happened at all?
It's really interesting to look at it's really interesting to look at this gap. I just got back from the RSA conference in San Francisco, where there were hundreds of cybersecurity vendors exhibiting. And it was the continuation of a trend that we've seen at Black Hat and last year's RSA, where every single vendor in the security landscape has spray painted the letters A and I onto the side of their booth. And they've all started to show elaborate demonstrations of what their technologies can do by adding AI to them. But the reality is, since the introduction of ChatGPT and large language models, it's never been easier to create an amazing, compelling demo of AI technologies and how that could impact things. The fact is, though, actually delivering value from these technologies is really hard. And a lot of the vendors out there that are making very broad claims about AI technologies and AI additions have kind of come along lately, taken a product that they had, frosted some chat GPT on top of it, and that can actually make for a very compelling demo, but does it actually increase the amount of automation that you have to drive better detections, better investigations, and faster responses. And those are the only things that matter. So I think what we've seen is a lot of hype from the vendors, and that gets management excited when they're looking at these things, when they're out shopping, they're seeing amazing demonstrations that look like they're going to have big impacts. But when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, with the operators, they're not always seeing the value. And I think that's one of the big challenges for CISOs and SOC managers is how do I really differentiate hype and great demos from things that are going to be really impactful to my teams and the metrics that I care about?
Yeah, so this is interesting that you say this. We had another conversation with the CISO who said, what is really working for AI is the POCs. So that's exactly what, yeah, I get that. One more question, and this occurred to me when I saw the title of the book that you published, and it's an award-winning book, The Developer's Playbook for Large Language Models Security. This brings us to the question, security has to be baked at the time of development when you're talking about LLMs. Do you think technologies like large language models or machine learning models, artificial intelligence, have actually increased the incidence of security risk while they're also helping on one hand, but the risk has also gone up, right?
So this is a great question, and it's at the crux of what I talk to with a lot of different people in organizations. And I'll put this in three buckets in terms of the different areas that are being impacted by this new wave of AI technologies. So the first one, which is really the topic of a lot of the work that I started doing at OWASP, which led to the publication of the book, is using large language models inside your enterprise or building them into your software creates a new type of attack surface with new vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons that people have gotten so excited about this area of research is because there's a new headline every week. And originally it was, little mom and pop shops like a car dealership in the middle of America that put up a chat bot and it got hacked. But more recently, it's been Microsoft and Salesforce falling victim to this as they've built large language models into their co-pilots and into Slack and things like that, where they're falling victim to very complicated, nuanced versions of these vulnerabilities. And so understanding those vulnerabilities, and they have these cool new names like prompt injection and excessive agency, understanding those and having a framework for those is really crucial to a modern security stance, because your development teams, your IT teams are going to be using these technologies. You need to understand how they work and what the new vulnerabilities are. So there's no question that that's opened a new category of things for cyber professionals to worry about. The next one, though, is offensive uses of these technologies. And that we've seen a dramatic increase in the next 6 months, and I expect it to accelerate over the next 12. So what we saw, late last year was studies coming out from the big AI labs, OpenAI, Google, where they had actually started to study the nefarious uses of their model. So were people using them to generate cybersecurity attacks or work on exploring new exploits? And all the studies that came out from those labs came out with these headlines that I translate to: we often stop people from doing bad things with our technologies. The other way to read that is, we sometimes fail to stop bad people from doing things with our technologies. And when you really get into those reports, you could see the kinds of things people were doing. My team at OWASP actually really went and did a deep study of this, and they took the latest models from OpenAI and Anthropic and Google and put them through their paces at automated exploit generation. For the most part, they weren't up to completely autonomous, 0-day exploration and pen testing, but it was pretty clear across the board that those models were already in a position that when paired with a human hacker could dramatically accelerate their capabilities. The other things we see are these new novel attacks that are dramatic accelerations of what everybody's worst fear is, which is phishing. And we've now gone from phishing being poorly formatted emails with bad English to perfectly formatted emails with great English. Um, we've now seen the capability where a hacker can use an AI system to clone your company's website down to the smallest pixel and rewrite your login pages and things like that and do it in 10 minutes. Um, and then it escalates all the way to these things like automated real-time audio video deepfakes, which are very real. And we've seen reports across the industry of people interviewing for remote positions wearing deepfake disguises. It even happened at Exabeam. We caught somebody trying to apply for a job who was very clearly running a real-time AI deepfake. So when we look at those two things together, which is there are new attack surfaces with AI, there are new kind of exploits and things coming from AI. And by the way, the last point on that, which is it now doesn't matter what Google and Anthropic say about whether they're stopping people from using their technologies, because with models like DeepSeek coming out from China that are completely open source with no guardrails, everybody has these technologies. So the last of it really is the important part for our audience, which is how do I effectively use these for defense when the world is getting scarier because there are new vulnerabilities, there are new exploits. I need to keep up. It's an AI arms race, and that's the central things people need to remember is, certain CISOs have tried to take the attitude of I'm going to keep AI at bay. I'm going to close the ports so that people can't use ChatGPT in the enterprise. It's a very dangerous tack to take. You do need policies, you do need controls in place, but you can't stop AI from coming to your environment. It will one way or another, and you need a proactive strategy for how you're going to use it.
So, I think just related to this, I had another question that given the rapidly evolving nature of cyber threats, many brands are fast tracking innovation to get tools to fight them. What impact do you think this will have in the long run? Trying to push innovation to stay secure, a little more secure perhaps, because it's never going to be completely safe.
I think it's crucial that CISOs and security technologies do lean into these technologies. And, we talked about the results of the surveys, which is maybe the CISOs have been a bit optimistic about the results of those POCs. And are they paying off yet? I think the real onus on the leadership in these security teams is not to say, well, that was a bad idea, I shouldn't have done it. It's to lean in harder on making sure that those things are connecting with the people inside your SOC and driving the metrics improvements that you need and being really skeptical about the claims that you're seeing vendors make out there in the industry about the impacts these things will have. But the analogy that I think it comes closest to this, which is for those of us who are old enough to remember living and working through the dot-com revolution, there was a point in the 90s where people didn't know how to build secure web applications. It was opening up massive new security issues that people didn't know how to deal with. They had no frameworks for these, and websites were getting hacked, credit cards were being stolen. You could have taken the attitude of saying, not yet. The industry's not ready. I'll put up a website next year. We remember the companies that did that, and they're named Blockbuster and Sears Roebuck. And, they were the industry titans of last century that didn't lean into these new technologies because they were scared of them. As an industry, as a cybersecurity industry, or whatever vertical you're in, finance, medical, you need your own AI strategy, and you need to lean into it hard, and you need to lean into it aggressively, and know that you will make some mistakes, but that it's an existential question for your organization. You either figure out how to do this, you educate yourself on the risks, you look for the best mitigations, you use it in the best sensible way, but you have to use it. And so cyber defense teams need really well thought out, well developed strategies for how they're going to bring AI into their defense strategies. How are they going to measure that it's being effective? And how are they going to drive their roadmaps for continuous improvement using those AI technologies to assure that they keep pace with or keep ahead of these new AI enabled threat groups?
If someone were to ask you what you identify as a single most impactful tool that can support in fighting APT, ransomware, phishing, and all other types of threats, I don't want to club them into one, but all kinds of cyber threats. What would you suggest it would be? If you say encryption, my next question is going to be, what about when quantum comes in? So,
Um, Look, I think encryption is one of those foundational technologies that for a decade or two we could all take for granted that was very well solved and good. And there's an interesting thing around the corner that's happening. But I think the industry is going to prepare themselves for quantum. And when you go talk to the big cloud providers and things, they all have programs for post-quantum encryption that are ready for people to start picking up and implementing. So I don't think that's at the heart of the issue, and I think that falling back to encryption as your answer to things like Gen AI security problems is actually a really disastrous situation, and that's where you see someone like Apple failing in their AI strategy, which is their security strategy for Apple Intelligence was building a hyper secure data center to run it in. They failed to ship Apple Intelligence because they didn't have a good cybersecurity strategy because the vulnerabilities were not in the data center. The vulnerabilities were these new things like prompt injection, and they didn't have good mitigations for those, and so they haven't been able to ship a lot of the features that they promised. Here's the next piece of this is let's set aside things like encryption and focus on where those problems are. And when you do start to talk about, you know, ransomware and these other things that are at the top of every CISO's list, as they should be, there's a common thread that runs through these. And it's not that the data wasn't encrypted, it's that the credentials were compromised. And that happens in a couple different ways. It happens because you had weak credentials, insufficient authentication. Um, Often, though, it's true insider threats. It's a user sold their password. A user decided to exfiltrate data. I was traveling in Asia and I was in Japan, and I talked to numerous customers about how worried they were when they were offering people early retirement that those people would take secrets with them and sell them. And there's been a lot of actual problems in the news about that. So if we really establish the biggest thing that you need to worry about is insider threats and compromised credentials, you need to look for the techniques that are going to do that. And those are the sweet spots for AI technology. The only way to find those insider threats and those truly compromised credentials is watch the behavior of the users that are on your network and watch what they're doing. And every CISO will tell you that the most dangerous entity on your network is your own employees or people pretending to be them. So when you think about the use cases that you want to put AI to, I would think about, rather than saying what individual AI technologies do I want to use? Do I want to use large language models? Do I want to use UEBA? Uh, there's lots of technologies out there, but one of the things I would tell people to do is target use cases. And I think use cases, if you're trying to avoid ransomware is almost always the result of the vulnerability being weak access controls. And so applying AI to how do you control credentials, and then how do you look for behaviors that indicate lateral movement on your network and things like that. Those are things that are behavioral driven, and those are real strengths for AI technologies.
So thank you so much. We had a very interesting conversation, and I'm sorry I asked you a couple of questions which were not shared with you earlier, but I had the confidence that I'm going to get good answers in any case. So thanks for your
No
time,
problem.
Steve.
No, thank you for
Um,
having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.